Hey, welcome to the CMO Whisperer Show. I'm your host, Steve Olensky. Part marketing practitioner, part ad agency veteran, part journalist. I was a writer for Forbes for 10 years. I've had so many insightful conversations over the years with business leaders, to athletes, to celebrities, to, of course, CMOs. The only difference now is instead of sharing those insights through written form, I'm doing it this way. My guest this week is Karen Kaukol. She'll tell me if I said that right. Chief Marketing Officer at Entrust. Karen brings decades of leadership across global payments, financial services, and information technology. At Entrust, she leads the company's worldwide marketing strategy and execution, driving brand growth, customer engagement, and innovation in a space where trust and security are paramount. Before Entrust, Karen was CMO at Grable Relocation. Hope I said that one right. She'll tell me that one too. Spearheading sales enablement, customer acquisition and retention, corporate rebranding, and digital transformation. She also spent 17 years at First Data, rising to Senior Vice President of Global Marketing. With an MBA from the University of Minnesota and a bachelor's in marketing and telecoms from Indiana, Karen has built her career on blending strategic vision with practical execution, always with an eye towards scaling brands and driving impact. Karen Kaukol, welcome to the show. And did I say it right? You're welcome. It is my pleasure.
Let's do it.
I think we're going to have a great conversation. We got lots to talk about. So, as I say, let's jump in. So, okay, we got to start. Those two little letters, but that mean everything to everybody in AI, right? Now, AI is reshaping everything, including cybersecurity, from defense and offense. It's everywhere, right? But how do you talk about AI in a way that builds trust rather than fear, which we both know is very omnipresent?
It's a great question. It's unfolding real time, and it is something that in our space is both a problem and a solution. You know, AI has been a great accelerator of fraud with things like deepfakes and voice clones and digital document forgery. So I think our customers have been experiencing that for a while and seeing how much damage AI can done when it's not used for good. So for us, you know, the question is, how do we harness the power of AI to really accelerate our ability to detect fraud? And I think our customers get that and expect a certain level of compliance, transparency. You've got to think about data privacy, and are you in keeping with the latest regulations worldwide, because there's myriad of them. So I think that's a built-in layer for creating a sense of trust as well. But the transparency and trust piece also comes at the end user experience and them understanding what type of information you are collecting, how you're using it, and how long you're keeping it. So it is a really important time to be really transparent about how you're leveraging the technology. I think we as consumers are also getting so familiar with it and are beginning to understand just how useful it is in our personal life. I don't know about you, Steve, but I love AI, the Google AI search engine results. Mm-hmm. And it really often does lead me to be able to research topics in an insane amount of time without ever going to the website at all to get the information they're referring to. So I think we're experiencing it on a personal level. We're seeing it when we travel. We're seeing it in so many facets of life. People are becoming used to it, but there is still skepticism that, you've got to be protecting that customer's data.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, listen, I love the Google tool too. It's changing SEO and everything like that. But I use ChatGPT. I mean, my gosh, I ask it, what time should I go to bed?
Same.
I mean, what should I have for dinner? Like, it's scary. It's, it knows my voice. It knows my tone. It's scary. That's why, the word fear, but then I think it's just more exacerbated in financial services, right? That, wait a minute, I'm going to give an AI, a faceless, nameless thing, my most precious information.
Yeah. We try not to market on fear of, what could go wrong here. And obviously, certainly not with regard to our products. But I think you also have to look at it as these are some of your most trusted relationships in life. And I think based on different use cases, you're more willing to accept more information exchange and more detailed information exchange. I think about financial services. That's the keys to your financial kingdom, right? Your banking relationship. So over time, we've gotten to the point where I think early in financial services, consumers would expect more friction as time went on in the relationship. They didn't know you at first. It was relatively straightforward process to get into a new banking account. But as you wanted to do more and more things that required more assets, the bank was looking for more authentication and verification of who you are. Now, I think consumers are experiencing that onboarding stage where they're just opening the account with you. And that's where we really want to make sure we know you are who you say you are. And you're the attached to the identity you're presenting. And then once you're in the account, even, you think about just a few years ago, we were all using usernames and passwords for the most part to get into your bank account. And I don't know about you now, but any financial services account I have now, it's multiple levels of authentication to access that account, right? You're getting the prompt for the SMS passcode, or the SMS passcode will be sent your way. You are entering your phone if you're on a mobile device with a fingerprint or facial recognition. So there are layers of security to make sure that the person transacting in your name is actually you. And I think most of us as consumers are, initially that friction was a little odd and maybe unwelcome, but now I've really come to appreciate it and actually expect it as a standard in certain relationships.
As the CMO,
not all, but
right,
certain
of
relationships
the company
where
like this,
the stakes are higher.
And you mentioned the challenge of marketing this particular product, tool, service, however you want to call it. The challenge has got to be in big in scope, like you're talking about. But I'm thinking part of this also has to be, correct me if I'm wrong, there has to be an education side to this.
For sure. Yeah. We are really focused on education. Our technologies, I once had a salesperson at our company say, you have to have 7 PhDs to understand our product portfolio. I said, that's not what we want. Right. And even though we're selling to IT folks, CISOs and CIOs, the buying group today, as you know, spans multiple functions. You can have up to 10, 14 people, and they all have different levels of knowledge. And mostly they know about what problem they're trying to solve for their business. So if you come into this assuming they understand even their problem, the full scope of their problem, let alone how your technology can help, it's a big assumption. You really have to come in with a listening posture and asking a lot of questions and helping to explain terms helping to explain products in terms that relate to the business objective they're trying to achieve. They're not trying to achieve a PKI installation. They're trying to secure their network so that you can their employees can log in securely from anywhere in the world, whether they're at home or on their mobile phone or in the office. And at the end of the day, it's all about growth. I mean, even though we're securing and we're enabling protection of that business, it's all in service of them growing their business. So you really have to take that lens and not be too in love with your own tech, your own features that you can't turn it around and really explain to them, here's how this is going to help you. Help you grow your business, help you remain compliant, help you love your customers, and keep a relationship with them for a long, long time.
For lack of a, right? But you also, it's a global company, right? So then you have all those very, very geographical specific, highly localized, right?
Yeah.
So talk to us as a global CMO of going, I can't talk to this person the same way I talk to that person, even though they may be right across the street, theoretically, right? But they're totally different language, culture, everything.
Yeah, there's so many considerations. I mean, the language, what's important. the visuals, the tone, the approach, even the techniques that work for influencing and educating different buyers. And I think about right now, like, we serve customers who are typically in heavy duty regulated spaces. And our identity verification suite right now is something that is really on fire in Europe, where it's a heavily regulated environment. Customers have learned and have come to expect know your customer type of approaches and regulations. So they know they're going to be vetted more rigorously up front in starting a relationship. But you bring that over to the United States, guess what? They don't care so much. Our customers want that level. They want fraud protection, but they also want to protect the customer experience and make it as seamless and smooth as possible. So if you introduce too much friction in the experience there, they're going to have problems with it. So whereas in Europe, we may be talking about just the know your customer validation process, being compliant, making sure you're squeezing out all the fraud you possibly can. In the U.S., we're talking about balancing that fraud with the customer experience to make sure it's
marketing 101 about know your
all that they want it to be,
right?
and
not to state
is
the
a
obvious,
positive
but
first
really
impression for their beginning of the relationship.
Right, it makes it all easier. But we know marketers, we tend to overcomplicate everything.
Yeah.
But right, yeah.
Yeah. And it's really easy to not keep it simple, especially with technology, right? It's really easy to be talking to yourself, to get influenced by the engineers in your organization. And, I have at various points in my career been told we need to be more technical. We need to be more technical in our messaging. And yet when we talk to customers, it's always like, we have no idea what this means. Speak to us in terms we understand.
Yeah, I mean,
and so I think you've really got to protect
here because the
that
next thing
side of your instinct and your expertise. It says there's got to be a balance here.
And simplifying that stuff, because, I mean, you're talking things like cryptography, biometrics, identity platforms. There's a really, you could go way down many rabbit holes there and be really technical. But then how do you have your team and a marketing team turn tech speak into language that just resonates with everyday people like me?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we of course are selling to B2B buyers, and so different levels of knowledge. You have to kind of, there are different use cases in that buying process, right? So when you're talking to the IT folks, you are speaking to them about a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of the technology, how it works, whether some of the feature and capabilities are, platform integrations, et cetera. If you're talking to the risk and fraud people, you're talking about more of how what that balance between the customer experience and the ability to detect fraud is on the first day and every day of the life cycle. So, and then if you're talking to procurement, of course, that's a completely different conversation, as we all know. But you really got to be just mindful, first of all, of who you're talking to. But even in IT, I've seen so many studies that say, and particularly in cybersecurity, it's not unusual for customers to purchase products and not be able to implement them, not fully understand what they do and implement them. And what a shame, what a failing. And so for us, I think we really look at it and say, not only are we offering these really important solutions to help them protect their business, but we're also offering our expertise and our advice and our counsel. We've been in this space for 50 plus years. And there are a lot of companies, a lot of startups out there, very crowded space, very dynamic space. But we've had the benefit of seeing the arc of payments and identity and security through just this amazing transformational period. We have a broad perspective. And we know that not all shiny objects end up being shiny objects, that there are some tried and true fundamentals that will always stand, and also that network environments, our companies, the customers we serve, their environments are very complex. They're not cookie cutter. So you really have to be thinking and partnering with your customer to understand what's your environment, what are you trying to do, what can you what are you capable of taking on in a certain time period? And then what is the regulatory impact and implications? And, every time there's a new reg, it's a whole frenzy of, my gosh, what does this mean? What does it mean? The reality is it's typically a multi-year process to get in compliance. And we have to help them really understand the impacts,
just a few
how they
minutes
want
ago,
to
and it
adapt that
reminded
for
me, I was
their
talking to
environment, and what
a
it's,
leader at a very big tech company. I won't say the company,
what the
but
cost and the impact on their customer
they
experience is
came
going
to
to be.
learn that a large chunk of their customers were not using, they're only using like 40 or 50% of a given product's capability. And they realized it was their own fault because they said
Yeah.
said here's the the how-to guide, and like, good luck. And then there was no support. Like, wait a minute. And if the customer didn't raise their hand, they didn't know. And they go, why aren't you using these features? What features are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, totally common. We've had that same experience. I think that really led to the advent of the customer experience type roles, right? Where they could monitor usage, help you understand how this can be better applied, what types of use cases for your business exist that you may not even realize, what capabilities can be turned on very quickly. Yeah, we see that all the time. And especially, too, these are complex products. We cannot assume our customers know all the ins and
Yeah.
outs of how to manage and use them. So there is
And
an
don't wait for
ongoing
them
need
to
for
ask questions.
communication, education, and just
It sounds so, here's
frankly,
that word again.
a lot of
It sounds
dialogue
so
about
simple,
what they
but too
need
many
in our
companies do that.
roadmap
Like, oh,
that
I'm
we
not
may
hearing
not be
from my customers.
considering.
Everything must be great.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. I think the basics are undervalued oftentimes in marketing. It's easy to get carried away with whatever the latest cool thing is, but you got to make sure you're doing the fundamentals right. Do I have a solid vision for my brand?
Yep.
Do
I want to shift
we
to
have a
redefining
clear and
identity in a
compelling
digital
value
world.
proposition? Are we solving
Identity has
a
shifted from
real
really being a
problem
static
that is timely and
credential, if you
pressing for
will,
customers
to really
today? And are
that
we
digital
doing it in a way
representation of who we all
that is
are.
affordable
But
to
my
them?
first question is, how has that changed the way you think about marketing and
Yeah.
trust solutions? Mhm.
Well, again, we've been through this arc over just in my time at a trust where when I came in, it was primarily still physical credentials, whether it's an identity to badge you into your employer, a physical
Mhm.
passport, or a physical payment card. And over time, we've stepped into, and again, and different markets move at different paces, right? Asia was digital far before the rest of us. Europe was digital before the US really started to adopt. But what we're seeing is this evolution of physical into digital. It moves at different paces in different markets. And interestingly, then there are always people out there saying, "Oh, yeah, this is the death of physical credentials. That's it. Everyone's going all digital." Not so much. I mean, we talk about that, and there are some consumers that will. They tend to be on the younger side, but we also see a lot of our customers
Mhm.
saying physical and digital both make sense, particularly with banks or some of these fintech companies that start out with a pure digital wallet, and then they come back to us and say, we actually would like a card. We'd like to have a payment card or an identity card. It gives us it's a visual representation of the brand. It's in their wallet, and there's value in that. But I think identity for me now, I look at it, I say it just needs to work. No matter where you are, how you're presenting yourself, it just needs to work. And I think increasingly
Yeah.
that identity is going to be digital. It's going to be tied to something you are or know versus a physical card that you have. And that's where it's going. We're watching it unfold real time, and AI has been a huge accelerant of that
Mhm.
process. I think the other thing that really accelerated it was the pandemic. We just saw a crazy move from in-person everything to remote everything almost overnight, as you recall, I'm sure. And just the acceleration of commerce and engagement through digital platforms went through the roof, and we saw it in our product sales. Everybody suddenly had to become an expert in securing remote devices, laptops, mobiles, etc., remote interactions with their customers. So it's been
That's an understatement.
a sea change. And I'd say in the last 2 years alone, just with AI, there's been more change than we've seen in 10 years. And in that 10 years before, the pace of change was quite fast. Yeah. Yeah. I came into payments originally about 20 years ago. I thought this was a sleepy little business. I
think you
could
said
not have
it
been
or I
more
read it somewhere,
wrong.
but you
What
think
we've seen
marketers
in
need to make
payments,
identity
the way it's now
solutions,
converging into
quote,
identity,
inclusive, intuitive,
and the way
and
security
human-centered.
is so critical in
It's a
underpinning
mouthful,
both.
right?
It's
And
all
I could
just
also
coming
say
together.
those three things should apply to any brand, but in the context of identity solutions, inclusive, intuitive, and human-centered. Now, the human-centered part, I can see people going, well, what do you mean human-centered? We're talking AI. How could it be human-centered? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think, well, there are some obvious ways, right? Like biometrics literally are just that. But I think what I think about in that regard is how much control you have over um, how much information you're sharing in what time and place, right? If you think about in days of old when you had to share a birth certificate or a driver's license, whatever, you're sharing information that maybe they need to see, maybe they don't. Maybe they just need one or two pieces of information. So having more control over what components of your identity are being shared is really big. I think understanding how it's being used, how long it's being held,
Given your vast
building that
experience, I really
trust
want to pick your brain on some leadership
with those
questions.
citizens or customers is also really important. That's
Give
a
us
big part of
a
human
lesson
centered
you
for me is
learned, a
that I
leadership
have the
lesson you learned
confidence
earlier in your
you're
career
not
you
going to
wish you had learned
misuse my
earlier. I mean,
data.
a lesson you wish you had learned earlier in your career.
Sure.
Mm, mm.
I think it's to listen more than you talk. To listen more than you talk, to really understand where people are coming from. It gives you, and especially as a marketer, it's important. It gives you the ability to synthesize not only information, but perspective. And you need that to be a storyteller. And that's how I think about marketing fundamentally. I don't like to think of it as this hawkish selling shiny objects and just beating a drum. I like to think of it as a process of connection and education that actually can be helpful to people. Like if you, a marketer who can really synthesize what your need is and how a solution might be able to help that need, that is
The responsibility of the leader.
what a
That's to me
gift.
one of
There
them
are
is
very
building
few
future
brands that
leaders,
do that
right?
for you, that can
Are there
really
certain
help you
qualities you focus
connect
on,
with
like when it comes to
exactly what you
developing
need at the right
those on your
time.
team?
So that's probably the number one thing for me is it all starts with listening.
Mhm.
Well, obviously, you want that baseline level of skill and intellect, but for me, more than anything, it's do they have the fire in the belly? Do they have the passion? And then how do we, if they've got that, if they're hungry, how do you expose them to as many different facets of the business and marketing as possible to build a well-rounded skill set? I think that is just critical. And I had mentors early in life that did it for me. I remember one job where I was way too young for all the responsibility they gave me, but I was developing their website. I had product packaging and trade shows and PR and sales enablement, and it's a lot. But early career folks can handle a lot. They're hungry for a lot.
How
They
do you
have to be
feel
given
about
the
risk taking,
opportunity,
how do you create?
to
Because I
learn,
ask
to
this
try, to
leaders and I ask
fail.
leaders this all the
And I
time. How do you
think
create that
that's
space
our duty
for your
as
team to
leaders,
take
is to
risks
give
without
them
that
those
fear of
kinds of
failure?
experiences. They grow quickly if you do. And if you don't, I think they stagnate and they leave.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, it's a great question because we're so driven by metrics, right? Marketing has become so metrics and analytics oriented, and it's easy to over rotate on, how much pipeline did this deliver? How much did this lift our transaction value? Whatever the measure, what was the return on marketing spend for this? And it can lead you to not take risks and do a lot of things that are sure things that will deliver a return that you can say, hey, we got a good ROI, but you're never taking a big risk. And so I think, first of all, you have to create some space, you have to create some budget, and then encourage the kind of discussions and brainstorming to get people really focused on how could we think about this in a completely different way. And I also always think about, there are a lot of campaigns and programs that we tend to feel like, oh, this is the most important thing in the world. The reality is, it's a lot of content is there's so much velocity of content. So many campaigns are what I think of as disposable in a lot of ways. The risk isn't that big to test different approaches, to test different
Mhm.
language and see what works. And I think the learning that comes from that is huge. So for me, it's just encouraging people to create the space, making sure they leave the budget to enable that if that's required, and just making it clear that failing is not a bad thing. Failing is a learning opportunity, and it makes you smarter for the future. I mean, you think about, I'm sure you're this way
Mhm.
too, Steve, but throughout my career, I've learned as much from the failures as the
Well,
successes. It
you were
all
correct, even though we
cues to
just met,
make
but you know
you
me now well
a
enough.
better leader, a
Absolutely. I
better
mean,
thinker, a better
failure, I don't know
strategist.
what's the Einstein quote
And
about
so that's what I hope to create,
someone who's
that
never
type of
failed has never done
environment,
anything
and,
new, or
and
something like that.
encourage all of our team
Yeah,
members to
thank you.
just adopt that mindset.
Correct. Correct.
You're
Okay.
not trying too hard. You're
If
not
you listen
trying hard
to, I think,
enough,
my show
right?
before, you know
You
how I
have to
end
get
every
over
episode. It's
that
called the Random Five.
fear of being
Well, I
embarrassed
just ask
or
five random questions.
underperforming or not making a number.
Some are about
You'll
personal, some
never
are about
take a
professional,
big
but they're just
swing
to
if you
show your
don't take a
personal side,
risk.
your personality. So if you're game, the first question is, what was your very first job and what did it teach you that you still apply today?
Sure.
Mm,
Uh, babysitting. I worked summers growing up, I
hmm
think from age 10 on. I somehow landed all summer long babysitting gigs. And it taught me accountability, empathy, responsibility in a big way.
Okay.
You're sitting there with
Next
two
question.
kids and
Who has been
you're
the most
still pretty much a
influential
kid
mentor
yourself.
or role model in your
Forces you to
life?
get a little more mature, a little more wise, and a little more perspective. But I think the responsibility of that well prepared me to move on to my next job at Burger King.
hmm
Oh gosh. It's hard to really pin one person there. I feel like from every relationship, there is a potential for mentoring and learning, whether the relationship is good or not good. But I've worked under some really amazing leaders. And I think about a couple in particular that come to mind. Our current CEO, Todd Wilkinson, who has led Entrust through a transformation over 20 years, came from a much larger company, GE, as did I, coming from First Data, and I think what he helped me really round out was my perspective on the business and the technology as much as the marketing. If you're too focused on just the marketing pieces, you can lose the broader perspective of what is the business really trying to accomplish? What are the targets? What are the, what really do we need to get done to keep the shareholder in a good place in the year ahead, as well as taking care of our customers and continuing to evolve and grow the company. I also had a great executive coach that I used twice at different points in my career, a woman named Leslie Hilton out of Boulder, Colorado. And she really just helped bring to me, I think, a broader perspective of leading with balance and always thinking about what the end game is, and are your actions and your behaviors and the words you're using, are they putting you closer to that end game, or are they taking you farther away? I think it's very easy to react in the heat of the moment, to say things that may or may not, in hindsight, have been a good idea. And so just kind of holding your counsel, listening a little bit more, thinking about what's the end game I need here. And then it's not about me. It's about getting this team to work together. It's about building their insight and their perspective on the market, getting them to work cross-functionally in the company so that we can make the magic happen. So it's really not about you, is one of the big things I've learned from the best leaders. I'm a huge fan of Kiss, the rock band Kiss. From the 70s and 80s, I owned every single one of their albums until my dad sold them all at a garage sale, for which I will never forgive him. And I did see them at a concert about 6 years ago with my sisters, and we all agreed they should probably hang it up. The spandex isn't quite as thrilling when you're 65. I never did, but I was in the KISS Army. I had posters of them all over my walls. And I interrupted a family vacation to watch Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. So I said, I'll go on this vacation, but we have to be able to see Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, which again, in hindsight, was not the best piece of film I've ever seen, but it was a thrill at the time. I am pretty routine there. I no matter where I am, I always go for a run, always. Fewer miles than it used to be, but just because as you get older, the body doesn't quite cooperate. But if I don't get my run in, I don't feel good. And then I'm typically, even before that, I've checked emails, text, that sort of stuff. I do a quick flip through of the news, of socials, see what's going on in that world, and just kind of scanning the broad landscape before I get into planning out my day. And I really try to think about, like, what are the 2 or 3 big things I got to get done today? I'm sure you experience this too, but you can come into a day and the day can own you if you don't get on top of it first. So I often am facing calendars that are just packed back to back all day long with meetings. And you've got to make sure you're carving out time for, like, what do I need to, hopefully these meetings align with what you need to get done. But what are the 2 or 3 most valuable things I can do to help move the ball forward today, to help my team advance our goals today? And I always try to keep that in mind, because I think it's really easy with all the communication channels coming at us all the time. My brain feels like an aggregator more than a like it used to feel like I was a reader, and now it's like I'm an aggregator. And I think, and as part of that, you've got to also be sifting, like, what of this do I really need to pay attention to? Which meetings do I really need to be in? Which documents do I need to read in full? Who do I trust to really educate me? And how do I stay, in control of my time, which is the most precious resource any of us has? I think it's probably running and in the mountains. Yeah, like my
Well,
perfect
Karen
recharge would
Kaukol,
be
I said it right again.
there's this beautiful lake in southern
Wow,
Colorado,
twice.
Lake San Cristobal.
CMO of
We have a cabin nearby,
Entrust.
and
This is a
if
big deal
I
for me. You don't
can
understand. I'm going
run,
to put this on my LinkedIn.
particularly now when it's turning to fall and the leaf colors are
Thank
so
you so much
beautiful,
for your time.
running
You are
around
an
that
absolute
lake,
treat.
that's heaven to
And
me.
I really
Absolute
want to,
heaven.
again, just thank you for your
You
time. Thanks
did.
for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed speaking with you as well, and all the best.